Hey, welcome back to my channel. Today, yeah, I wish I could say we had another stellar review, but when I say this is one of the biggest reading disappointments I've had in a while, that says something. This should have checked at least a few boxes, but it fell short on all accord. The book we're reviewing today is Saint by Sierra Simone. I could be butchering that name, and if that's the case, I apologize. She's also written books titled Priest, Midnight Mass, and Sinner. She's a writer based in Kansas City. Let's dive into it. Our main characters are Aiden Bell, also known as Brother Patrick, who is a former millionaire turned monk after something ended his engagement to our love interest, Elijah. To be honest, I don't remember his last name. That's how forgettable I found these characters. The prologue had me thinking, oh hell, this is gonna be a good read. But what followed was a book that should have been at least 200 pages shorter. We have gotten the exact same story. Now, I do want to say that this is a book you love, then that's okay. This is simply my opinion, and well, no opinion is set in stone. You're allowed to like what you're allowed to like, and I'm allowed to dislike what I dislike. It just really felt like a chore to get through. So let's head on to the actual review. We found out that Aiden is wanting to find a stricter cluster of monks to belong to, thinking that because he still hasn't let go of his love for Elijah, that the practices around him aren't strict enough to keep him empty for God's love. We also get random snippets from Elijah's writing that shows he hasn't moved on either, which can I just say, the writing add-ons from Elijah has nothing important to it. They were entirely unneeded. We get it, he's a writer, but a lot of it was just dumping feelings that could have been shown through the character himself. Most of these I ended up just skimming over because they really didn't add anything to the story. Another note from my, notes, is that her writing style is super repetitive. I understand she likely wanted to show that the monk's life is about repetition, but we could have done without whole chapters. I got nothing from just rereading the same guy pining over and over again. And it wasn't like, oh, it's building up to like a madness. It was just, dude was just really, really horny. The writer wanted to add length to the book. She could have just added a swapped POV. That way we could get into Elijah's head more than just the page or two long chapters of his writings. Also, Aiden is supposed to be the sort of not paying attention fuckboy yet loyal to his boyfriend partier type, yet in the same chapter you're told that he remembered things about his partner. Like, which one is it? It really just felt like the author wanted to shame the guy for being the type that likes to give expensive gifts to his partner. I don't particularly agree with this, since there's nothing wrong with gift giving being a love language. It just felt really shallow and like the author couldn't really commit to giving her character a flaw, which is in itself a bad flaw. I do sort of like that the monks had a mental support group called Levitia Lexapro. I think, I'm not going to go back and double check, but it was kind of cool. This chapter ends with Aiden bouncing on a riding bouncy ball to Elijah's feet. I really couldn't tell if this book wanted to be serious or silly, because nothing silly like that happened again. I'm sorry if you can hear my cats running around like crazy. They apparently also don't like this book. Going back to the actual topic, I guess maybe the author wanted to show that, hey, look. Oh. Maybe the author wanted to just show, like, hey, look, this guy hasn't changed at all. But, like, we didn't need him bouncing on a ball to show that. He showed that by simply not being Molly-like. I mean, guy, this entire time up to the story, we constantly get about how this guy is always not having the driest of dreams. And then this had been going on for like 4 years. So like, we didn't need him riding on a bouncy ball to show this. At this point, the book, Aiden is told that he's going to be playing tour guide for Elijah since he's writing a paper about monks and their breweries, which I did kind of find kind of cool that monks still brew beer apparently. It's something I wanted to look into more now. In my notes, I will admit I start to get kind of petty. Entire chapters are just internal dialogue, which isn't inherently bad, but when it's the same thing being repeated a few chapters ago, it just felt like a slog. Also, apparently I found Aiden to be a self-pitying fool and Elijah to just be boring. I get where he's coming from, but he's literally about to get married. Closure is never closure, so why bother his ex-boyfriend as he plays God's boyfriend? Shocking, Jamie, Elijah's future husband, is going to visit the Abbey. It's like this author just picked the most tried plotline possible and added nothing new to it. Apparently, he's into microbreweries. He's a typical nice guy who's too nice to say anything about the fact that Elijah is staring down Aiden. At least I assume he is. This author didn't really get the idea of how to show passion very well. I don't know. I'm trying not to be too bitter about this book. They all get to drinking, and we get a time shift where Aiden walked into the place's gift store and asked to become a monk. I would have rather the characters actually talk about the scene rather than a flashback, but again, I will fully admit that is a very nitpicky kind of thing to complain about, so I don't really count it against the book. It's just a preference. I don't really like flashbacks too much. At least not when they're done when a character is telling a story. So Jamie leaves and it's late at night. Aiden overhears Elijah helping himself, quote unquote. My only real complaint in the scene that 90% of them is since you have a monk character, you would expect more intermingling of lust and shame. Instead, we get a paragraph of lust and then a paragraph of shame. No human only feels one emotion at a time. They blend together. This would have hit so much more in the gut if they merged these feelings. I don't know if this was a choice by her or her editor, but this is when I realized not even these scenes would improve my view on the story. Again, it could be a stylistic choice, so those are kind of hard to judge, but, well, judge I am. Now, I do have one mini rant I have to get away before I summarize the ending. This word on screen is already an act. It does not mean this action. I don't know who told this author they are exchangeable, but they are not. When I read this, I legit thought the man had issues. This happens so many times in this book, you can make a drinking game out of it. Just stop it, get help. Trigger warnings, I lied, there's another part of this rant. Trigger warnings are on the screen. I will admit, I've never read her other books, and I likely never will. She uses this character named Jordan as such a plot device that it made it all the worse. I don't know if she's trying to say that he's a godlike figure playing with fate, as he both magically happens to be in the same French monastery they're at and drops random advice before fucking off, but also he's the one that sent the text late at night when Aiden was apparently going to take his life. At least it alluded that he was going to likely take his life, which I lied, there's a part 3, same trigger warnings as before. This author writes depression so cliche and painful, I was almost offended by how bad it is. A dark monster that spoke to him. Wow, that hasn't been done to death before. Not only did it feel so shallow, I get we see throughout the story he's seeing a therapist and he's on head meds, but the reveal on that being why he just left his soon-to-be husband and became a monk after his sister took her life due to religious trauma and then his mom died at some point, I guess. I don't know, that really just felt like it was just thrown on. This made me actively hate this book and I had to just brute force my way through it. Luckily, there's only like 20 more pages after this. I've battled with depression pretty much my entire life. I still have it, I still fight it every day. I'm sure some people, they can connect the whole trope of a dark, shadowy monster that speaks to you. But like, it just felt so shallow in this book that it didn't hit the mark, and honestly, they would have been better off having a different plot device that had him going towards God. I don't know. It really left a bad taste in my mouth, and so another reason why I will probably likely not be picking up any more of this author's books. That, and I think this is the only one with, well, 2 men together, I think. I don't know. Don't care to look. So, the ending. They split up after Aiden agrees to leave the monk life. Elijah dips out because he can't compete with God, which, like, dude is an absentee boyfriend, so you can't compete with that. That's on you. Like, this entire story, Aiden is just like hoping something from God shows him the way constantly. It's basically like he is just left on red this entire time. I don't understand the supposed connection he had with God when all he had a connection was with a routine, a strict routine. That's what made him better. Not God, a community around him. That's why this book is so confusing on what the message is. So let's get back to the ratings. Things have changed. The ranking format I'm using is Call Pile, done by Book Roast. Sorry if I mispronounced that. I'll post a link to their YouTube channel in a comment below since I'm not actually able to add links to my descriptions yet. And if that fails, I'll be posting it onto Twitter as well. So I'll be explaining the acronym as we rank, but I won't be doing that for further reviews. Also at the end, I'll kind of add a little extra review for the boyfriend subscription, just to kind of give you an idea of what that score would be in this sort of ranking. C, characters. Pretty self-explanatory. As I mentioned earlier in my review, the characters were just dull. Nothing stood out, and they seemed cookie cutter-like. Since these scores are out of 10, I'll give it a 3, because technically they could have been worse. A, atmosphere. So this is kind of how the vibe of the book is. Did everything fit together to create a story? I was generous and gave it a 9. The world building itself was fine and made me curious about the different areas they went, and also about monks, weirdly enough. W, writing. This is self-explanatory as well. How was the writing? I gave her a 3 because repetition is one of my least favorite things in writing and made the story incredibly boring. P, plot. Another there. I'm trying to be a little nice. The plot was dull and paint by numbers. Everything was predictable, and the idea of a monk being someone's lover was not fully expanded upon, so I gave it another 3. Intrigue. So this is whether or not the book drew you in and kept you reading. This shouldn't be shocking, but just a straight up 1. I wanted to DNF it, but instead I forced myself to keep going because, well, I needed to do a review this week. L, logic. Did the story make sense? Did the characters keep to their motives and didn't suddenly change course? I gave it an 8 because while the characters are dull, they didn't break character. E, enjoyment. Just straight up a 1. Even with the decently written scenes, I just did not enjoy this book. I didn't find myself thinking, oh boy, I can't wait to continue this story. So for our total on points, it's a 4 out of 10, which seems a little overly gracious, but by the logic and atmosphere score is really carrying it. So that's my review of Saint by Sierra Simone. As I promised before, here's an updated score for the boyfriend subscription. Just the numbers. If you want to find the reasoning, you can still kind of get the idea from the video itself. Character, 10. Atmosphere, 10. Writing, 10. Plot, 9. Intrigue, 10. Logic, 10. Enjoyment, 10. So the grand total of the score is a 9.86, which feels pretty fitting. Well, that's all for now. So goodbye and see you later. Bye.